Bonjour French students, bienvenue au vidéo 7 du chapitre 6. So we are on our 7th video now for chapter 6. We'll do one more this week before we get to the exam for chapter 6. So a lot of this chapter, or at least the end of the chapter, is dedicated to studying the difference between le passé composé et l'imparfait. And it's really understandable because it's not an easy difference for English speakers to master at first. It takes a little practice, a little bit of thinking, a little bit of recognizing different expressions that are in sentences, and just thinking about the time frame when different events are happening. So as we've already learned, the imparfait talks about how things used to be or what was going on when something else occurred or happened. It describes continuing actions or states. The passé composé is for actions that happened and were finished, or even actions that happened in a sequence. Okay, so we can look at some basic rules of when to use these two tenses. We'll look at 3 rules or so for each of the tenses, and then we're actually gonna do kind of a quick exercise where we'll try to guess which of the verbs belong in different sentences. Hopefully that will really help you understand the difference. Okay, so we use the imparfait to talk about how things used to be or what used to happen. So continuing action states or situations, repeated or habitual actions, especially if for an unspecified duration, we don't know exactly how long they went on. And we can see that in these sentences below. So, notre ami habitait à côté de chez nous. So our friend lived next to us. We don't really know how long that happened, what the duration of time was, so the imparfait would be a good choice in that case. Or elle invitait toujours des amis chez elle. So she always invited friends over. This one is a really clear case of the imparfait because of the word toujours. It's an adverb of frequency, and that's describing how often she invited people. She did it all the time, always. Okay, we use the passé composé by contrast to describe what happened at a precise moment or for a specific duration or number of times. You're thinking completed actions here. Things that happened maybe, for a specific duration, or they happened a certain number of times. So in this sentence we have Elle a fait une soirée le mois dernier. This one is easy because we have a specific time frame right here. Le mois dernier tells us that this happened last month. There's no doubt that it would be passé composé because it was at a specific point in time. Or nous sommes allés, okay, we have another passé composé verb here, à 5 de ses soirées. So we went to 5 of her parties. Oh, it's a specific number. Now we didn't, go to her parties for years at a time or every week habitually or something. We did it a specific number of times. Okay, 5 fois. All right, so going on to look at a few other rules here. We use then, going back to imparfait, we use it to talk about what things were like or how someone felt, their physical or mental state. So, tout le monde allait bien. I will highlight our imparfait verbs here. Mais moi, j'étais fatiguée. Okay, so everybody was doing well, but I was feeling tired. So we're talking about our physical, mental states, how we're feeling, how other people are feeling. But in the passé composé, it would be a change in state. And we can tell that by this expression, tout à coup, or all of a sudden. And if you want to break down that expression just as a side note, the word coup means like a hit or a punch. So tout à coup means like all of a hit, kind of all of a sudden. Okay, j'ai eu peur. Okay, so j'ai eu is a good choice here, because it's tout à coup, all of a sudden. So at that precise moment, I got frightened. It happened just at that moment. So that's a great reason to use passé composé. Okay, and this part below here just reminds us to watch out for expressions like tout d'un coup, all at once, tout à coup, all of a sudden, soudain, suddenly, une fois, once, or un jour, one day, because all of those expressions indicate that something happened at a really specific moment in time in the past. Okay, so we could say for number 3, on allait partir in the imparfait. We were going to leave. Okay, so what someone was going to do, and you can contrast that with what someone went to do at one point in time. Je suis allé chercher mon sac. So, I went to go and look for my purse. I went at one moment, I made that decision. I went, I did it, and it's finished. Okay, if I said on allait partir, it probably means that we were planning on leaving, but maybe we got caught up in a conversation and we ended up hanging out for a little bit longer. Okay, so now that you've got the differences between those verbs, the different examples in your mind, let's go ahead and take a look at, let's get on the right page here. Oops, let's find it. All right, let's get to an exercise that's going to help us kind of make some decisions about which verbs will fit in which sentences. So this is an activity that happens to be all in French, which is good practice. It comes from lingolia.com. So as it tells us here, complète les phrases en choisissant à chaque fois le temps qui convient. So complete the sentences by choosing each time the tense that goes along with that sentence, imparfait ou passé composé. Et en conjuguant les verbes. So we need to conjugate the verbs in the blanks. Okay, this first sentence, il y a un mois. Here is a clue right off the bat. So 1 month ago, what do you think? Would it be imparfait or passé composé? This is a specific point in time, right? Il y a un mois, a month ago. This has to be passé composé, right? So let's go ahead and fill our blank with that. So j'ai décidé. Okay, j'ai décidé de partir en voyage. All right, comme mes parents, and very often être is going to be an imparfait verb if it's describing a feeling, a mental state or something like that, or kind of setting the scene of a story. It's most likely going to be an imparfait. So we're going to go ahead and choose that as our verb. So, comme mes parents étaient malades, ils sont restés à la maison. So this imparfait verb would be sort of setting the scene and then describing what they did as a result of that. So as my parents, or because my parents were sick, they stayed at home. Ils sont restés à la maison. Et je suis donc partie seule. So I therefore went out alone. Le soleil brillait. Okay, this is definitely describing the scene. Okay, the sun was shining, and you can even recognize in English, we would use the past continuous, which is one of the translations of the imparfait. The sun was shining when I took the train. So the sun was shining. It was all happening in the background. That was the foundation of the scene here. But then I took the train. So which one do you think it'll be? It has to be passé composé, right? J'ai pris le train. Et j'avais choisi une ville en Pologne. So I had chosen a city or a town in Poland. J'avais choisi, this is probably a tense you haven't seen yet or may not have seen recently. And this is the plus que parfait, and that's basically, it's a past tense that's more in the past. So I had chosen a city in Poland. La ville a semblé or semblait vide? What do you think it would be? I think if we're describing the city, it would have to be imparfait, right? Semblait vide. Tout restait silencieux. So definitely describing the scene. The city was empty, everything was silent. Et le plan de la ville, hey, you think it would be a été or était? I'm going to guess it's probably imparfait. était illisible. That might be a new word for you. It's unreadable, illegible. No, illisible, it's unreadable, kind of like coming from the verb lire, to read. Je me sentais seule. Le plan de la ville était illisible, je me sentais seule. So the map of the city was illegible, I felt alone. Okay, soudain, we saw this already in the slides that we just took a look at, right? Suddenly, un coup de trompette. Retentir. This verb means for kind of like a sound that reverberates everywhere. So, soudain, un coup de trompette. So this is a sound that kind of blasted out of nowhere. I'm guessing we're looking at a passé composé. A retenti. Et puis, une foule de gens. Okay, they appeared all of a sudden, right? So apparu. Okay, and apparaître is a verb that's conjugated with être in the passé composé. Also, une foule is a feminine noun. It means a crowd of people. And because I'm using the passé composé with être, I need to agree with the subject, and that happens to be a feminine subject. Une foule de gens est apparue en dansant. So then a crowd of people appeared and they were dancing. They appeared all of a sudden. So the trumpet sounded, the crowd showed up, and they were dancing. Okay, certains jonglaient. Okay, so certains is a bunch of people, and jongler just means to juggle. So some were juggling, d'autres chantaient, okay, others were singing à plein poumon, like at full lungs, at the top of their voice, basically. Okay, so that's describing the scene and what the people were doing continuously at that moment. Okay. J'ai réalisé que c'était la fête de la ville. Okay, I think j'ai réalisé, and passé composé, would be the best choice here because you realize something at one moment in time. It doesn't last for a long time. You realize it and then you move on. Okay, c'était la fête de la ville. So the festival of the city was going on all around you, but you realized just at that one moment that this was it. Okay, so this one can be a little tricky until you read the whole sentence. Okay, je cherchais mon appareil photo, ma camera, quand quelqu'un criait or quelqu'un a crié mon nom. So, quand quelqu'un a crié mon nom, that happened at one moment. So I'm guessing that this is going to be an imparfait because it was something you were doing for a little bit when somebody cried out. Je cherchais mon appareil photo quand quelqu'un a crié mon nom. C'était mon professeur de musique. Et il a passé tous les ans ses vacances dans cette ville. Okay, this one seems like it could be an imparfait. Il passait tous les ans ses vacances dans cette ville, but I guess we're probably thinking of the fact that he's going each year, spending his vacation, and doing it kind of sequentially every year. Okay, so let's go ahead and vérifier les réponses. Okay, actually it should be passé, so there you go. It's something that he did continuously in the past, so it turns out that passé and the imparfait would be the better choice there. Okay, so that gives you, I think, a pretty good idea after looking at the slides. We saw the different situations where we could use passé composé or imparfait, and I think looking at these sentences kind of helps us think through that a little bit. When something is happening in the past continuously, something might come and interrupt it, or we had situations where we were just describing or setting the scene, or even as we saw in this very last sentence, something that happened habitually in the past, even though I was thinking of it in a different way at first. Okay. So hopefully that's a good overview, another good reinforcement of the difference between these two verb tenses. And we'll look at the same thing in one more video, video 8, later on this week, looking at this in the context of a short story. Okay, so I wish you all a very good evening, bonne nuit et à la prochaine.